everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Method Fitness with Travis Moore. Today, I've got a special guest on the show, Elena and her son, Noah. Elena, if you would, just go ahead and give a brief introduction of yourself and kind of your backstory, if you would.
Well, my name's Elena Fielder. I live in Weed, California. This is my son, Noah Fielder. Was born in 1982. With a twin who was premature, needed a blood transfusion, and it was infected with HIV, one of the first 3 in the United States to knowingly get it from a blood transfusion, back in 1982. So it's a lot different than it is now. And he battled with pneumonia. The second time he got pneumonia, his immune system couldn't fight it off, and he passed away. And I'm thinking, with carnivore and stuff, if we knew that back then, things would be different, because he was on soy formula. Okay. You know what I mean? I was on, we had to have different formulas. So, if I knew then what I know now, or my parents, vice versa, I just, it was, sorry, just totally lost my train.
No, it's okay. And it's common to see now today too with the formula. I don't know about in California, but I know here locally in Georgia, the formula shortage is unreal right now. If you go into the grocery stores, the shelves are just completely wiped out, and it's forcing a lot of people to have to use stuff like that. So,
right. Well, and then a couple weeks ago, I had seen a picture of the back of a formula can, and the second ingredient was high fructose corn syrup. Are you kidding me right now? You know what I'm saying? Like, really? Like, the breast is best, man. Yeah. So, that was shocking to me, that is something they put in what builds us up from the start. I mean, not all, I breastfed all my children 2 years apiece. I never gave them formula, but, most people do. And that's sad that high fructose corn syrup is one of the ingredients. It's heart-wrenching, honestly.
Yeah, it kind of goes right along the lines with a lot of the other processed foods that we've got on the shelves. But okay, so you guys are living in California, and I'm sorry for the tragic loss that you've experienced with Noah's twin, but kind of as things progressed. What's that?
That was my twin.
Oh, it was your twin. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. And so as time went on, kind of I know you guys, when you started having kids, that you had some complications and stuff with that as well. If you'd like to elaborate on that.
Yeah, when I was pregnant with Noah, the first ultrasound, everything was going great. I was seeing him move. I had a feeling it was a boy, and they were quiet for a really long time. And I was like, is something wrong? And they're scrambling around, and they come in and they say, there's something wrong with your baby's head. It's quite a bit larger than it should be this far along. We want to run some more tests. So I went to another hospital up in Oregon, and they couldn't put a name on what it was either. And I was like, well, what is wrong with my baby? I need a third opinion. So they sent me to San Francisco, and they did some nerve conduction, CVS tests, where they poke a needle and take placenta. They did testing then, and everything was fine. There was nothing, and they were worried with my twin brother and stuff, because they had all his stuff on file there in San Francisco, because he was a patient there too. Wondering if it could be connected with the liver storage disease my twin had. Well, long story short, it all panned out. It started resolving itself in the womb. By the time he was born, it was gone, and he was perfect, and no cone head even. It was amazing. But the doctor had told me while I was pregnant with him that I should save myself the trouble and consider terminating the pregnancy to save myself a lifelong, heartache.
Wow. That'd be
like, no way, no way.
Extremely difficult to hear from a doctor.
Yeah. I just knew. Noah told me from the inside, I'm going to be fine, Mama, and so I listened to that, and he was. And they told me best case scenario, he would be a vegetable. And here my son is starting school in gait, skipping grades. And I'm like, yeah, we showed them,
Yeah.
we never, we weren't carnivore, obviously, but we ate what we were taught, all the food groups, your vegetables, your fruits, your meat, your carbs. Um, so that was something we were, it's how I grew up too, home cooked meals from scratch, Um, and then, I battled with my weight. Noah was doing good, so that was no longer an issue. But throughout, you know, years, I battled with my weight. It was fluctuating constantly between 160 and 210, 220.
Now, was that more of like a like some people like to call it yo-yo dieting, or was yours more of just fluctuations? Like,
No, I didn't diet. It was fluctuation. It was, or I'd go on binges. I loved eating. I
oh
still
yeah,
love eating, but I love
binge.
tasting food. I was a foodie. I was a junkie. I loved sugar. I loved carbs. I would eat a whole row of Oreos and consider it accomplishment. You know what I mean? Later in life, in my early 20s, that's kind of how it was.
That's nothing. I used to eat the whole package.
Yeah,
So
I wasn't gonna say that though.
yeah,
Yeah, but no, and then let's see, I played roller derby for a while. I was in really good shape when I played roller derby. I was, 150 pounds, but I didn't eat healthy. So, I would get lethargic and, stuff like that. Now being on carnivore, I'm like, man, if I was doing that then, there would have been no stopping me, you know. Um, but and that went well. I loved it. I thought I was going to do it forever. It was amazing. The self-esteem, the confidence it helped with. My kids seeing their mom being involved in something was good too for them to see me be that way, considering they grew up seeing me depressed and sad. I was on Zoloft for 17 years. On antidepressants, started at the age of 17. They put me on Prozac. And really, if we just would have known, it was what I was consuming,
right.
That
Yeah.
would have
No,
been.
the Zoloft and what was the other one you said? Prozac? Is that the second one you listed?
Yeah, they
Are
put me on that
those
when I was 17.
are
Mhm.
those both SSRIs or?
I don't know about Prozac, but I know Zoloft is. And they put me on it when I was pregnant with Noah, actually, because I was so depressed and crying all the time. They said, why don't we put you on an antidepressant? And I'm like, but I'm pregnant,
Mhm.
no. And they're like, well, this one's really safe during pregnancy. And I think it would be safer than you being so emotional and crying all the time.
Right.
So that's when my Zoloft journey began. And by, I don't know, I'd say 3 years, within 3 years, they had me up to the full dose of 200 milligrams a day. And, it was kind of like jail in a sense. Like if you ran out or if the pharmacy didn't fill it right away, you would have major withdrawals. I would have brain twitches, heart palpitations, jittery, just angry, short tempered. I mean, it was terrible, and I felt like a slave to it, honestly. So then when I finally had to go out and get a job and where I work now and met my boss, and, he told me that he eats all he eats is meat and he eats raw liver sometimes. I was just like, what? Just thought it was the craziest thing. Man, I was like, no way. And then I came to work one day and my joints just hurt really bad. I was in so much pain and I suffered with migraines too for years. Like, sit down right here, buddy. Okay. And I was just like, man, I have a headache again. He's like, I said, my joints hurt. He's like, what'd you eat last night? I'm like, oh, I had this amazing big salad. Just tell. He's like, that's probably why your joints hurt. And I'm like, just thought he was crazy. So just pay attention. Just do me a favor. Pay attention the next time you eat vegetables to how your body reacts. See how it feels. And I did that. And I was like, okay, whoa, there's some truth to this. But I'm like, I'm not going to go with it yet. I did it again and it happened again. And I was like, I'm sold, And that's when my journey began with carnivore. I didn't delve in, completely, but I started cutting out vegetables and fruits and carbs as much as possible. That was the hardest one for me, being a foodie, love my bakery goods, Um, so that was really cool. And then my headaches were going away. I wasn't getting migraines anymore. I would have to go to the ER sometimes. They were so bad.
Wow.
Um, and so I was like, okay, this is nice. I started dropping weight and I wasn't exercising, and then it's just shedding off. And I'm like, how is this happening? I started feeling good about myself. It was amazing. And and I wasn't 100% carnivore until March of this year, so but
Now
that
you
was
said you were saying before that you weren't like prior to that transition this past March. Would you say that you were carnivore-ish, like you were carnivore
yeah,
most
it's
of
like
the time, and then
70
just
to 80%
what were some of the
carnivore.
other foods you were incorporating? Were you still incorporating some fruits, or kind of, because I know some people do like it.
Occasionally I would have, like, if I got cramps in my calves, I would have a banana,
Okay.
or I would have a cucumber, sliced up, put in vinegar and water with salt and pepper, like
Yeah.
a cucumber thing. I would do things like that. Occasional green beans,
Right.
but nothing substantial. I tried to stay away from it as much as possible.
Yeah. So it's more of like a strict keto approach at that point then.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I would go to Starbucks and get the egg bites or get a
Right.
ham and cheese croissant, occasionally. But again, being a foodie and addicted to food and pastries and all that, I was like, I could still have a ham and cheese croissant. It's okay,
Yeah. That's kind of how when I started playing with diets and stuff, that's kind of how I looked at it for a long time too. It was like, well, I am moderating so much already that maybe it'll be okay if I have it once a week, or if I, do this, but I soon came to find out, and I shared this with another guest we had on, I think it was last week, that some people are really good at moderating stuff and other people have to abstain from it. Like they just can't touch it. And I found out I was one of those people, because if I thought it was okay, like I used to make these special, like this cookie recipe that I had of a diet that I was trying previously to carnivore, which was referred to as a specific carbohydrate diet. And it was really popular for Crohn's and colitis and stuff.
Mhm.
And this was the one dessert out of there that I thought sounded pretty good. So I would make a batch of them, but I would eat the whole batch in like 2 days.
Right.
Like, it would be gone immediately. So I could not moderate whatsoever. So I had to get to the point where I just cut stuff out like completely.
Yeah.
And so I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. When I started the 100% carnivore, I mean, I was still doing, before that I was, like I said, 80% carnivore. But I would do things like barbecued chicken, barbecue sauce on it, or McCormick steak seasoning, because I just couldn't wrap my mind around just plain meat flavor.
Right.
That took me a minute. But now I prefer it, actually. I crave it. I crave meat. Sometimes I get an urge to eat raw meat. And I'm like, what's going on? Why am I feeling this? I'm like preparing, putting butter and salt on my steak before I cook it. And I'm like, man, I want to take a big bite out of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My friend Bobby's just like, do it. Just do it then.
Yeah. Yeah. I've went from making, like I used to always cook my steaks medium well whenever I ordered them at a restaurant.
Mhm.
And now whenever I cook a steak, people are like, man, I think that thing's still moving. And I'm like,
Yep.
no, I just seared the outside. And I said, I'm not worried about any bacteria or anything. It's basically cleansing the outside of it. And it's
Right.
easier to chew and digest for me than it was when I cooked them medium well. So that's how I've come to enjoy them as well. So,
Right.
so
I
once
finally
you,
with cooking, I wasn't really much of a cooker before. My husband at the time he was a great cook. So he didn't make me cook. He's just like, oh, I got this, so jumping into this carnivore thing, it's so much easier. I'm like, I could cook great. You just sear it,
Yeah.
salt and butter, and you're done. It's great.
It takes out a lot of the guesswork, and you don't have to
Yes,
zest a lemon over it or anything like that. You can just
exactly.
salt and you're ready to go.
Like I can cook great now. You know,
Yeah.
I got this. But I
So
would overcook it a little bit at first. I had to, you know, fine tune it and be like, okay, this is the temperature you put it on. This is how long you leave it to sear it before you flip it. You know, I finally got that down. So now I'm golden. I got it good.
once you went from kind of that, keto carnivore approach to completely carnivore, I know you said you had joint pain, migraines. I think you even listed like allergies,
Yeah,
some
chronic.
gastro stuff. What were some other things that you experienced?
Well, I didn't realize that this is what it was until recently, but my eyes were always goopy.
Mm.
You know, like I feel like I would blink and it'd be like this foggy film when I'd open my eye, you know. And I'm realizing now that that's from the Graves' disease, you know, and the carbs coming out my eyes, I suppose. Um, so now if I can't eat egg whites either. I cannot eat egg whites at all. On a podcast Anthony had done, I had learned about that and I was like, okay, well, I'll start cutting that out. Or dairy's not good either. I have to be real minimal on dairy as well. Um, and was like, okay, my eyes feel better. And then I had an fried egg. And then not even in half an hour later, my eyes were just gooping up. And I'm like, okay,
Oh,
so I can't do egg whites either. You know, and that's the cool thing too, I've noticed with carnivore, 100% carnivore. You can tell, you know, what things are causing what. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
dairy. If I eat too much cheese, my eyes will do that goopy thing, you
Yeah, it's
know.
like you become hypersensitive to the foods that you're eating, and I've noticed that for myself too. You and I both share a similarity in the sense that we have thyroid dysfunction in a sense. For myself, it's Hashimoto's, and for you, it's Graves' disease. So it's kind of the opposite spectrum
Well, it's
of
really
thing.
strange because before the car accident, I had a dangerously low thyroid. Low. They said it's practically non-existent. They didn't never said Hashimoto's or anything, but I was on 85 micrograms of levothyroxine for years.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know what the car accident did. I mean, I lost my spleen. It ruptured on the steering wheel, so I'm spleenless. So I don't know if maybe that has something to do with it or just the shock of the trauma. You know, I'm not sure. Um, but now it's dangerously high. I mean, I'm leveling it back down, you know, with 100% carnivore. You know, so that's helpful. I can't wait to see, you know, them level out completely. Like I don't know if you noticed, but a lot of those abnormal numbers are going closer to the good range,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, I did see that they were. Some of them are still elevated, which is obviously to be expected after a certain amount of time of dysfunction. It's going to take time for things to
Right.
heal, especially when we're doing it in such a natural manner. But for myself, what I've found interesting is that my thyroid levels, like T3, T4, TSH, all of those are in range, but my thyroid peroxidase antibodies are elevated. So that is the only thing so far that I'm still working through in regards to levels. I just recently had blood work done and they came back and they're still elevated. So I'm the one thing I'm considering is, um, you know, carnivore versus the lion diet, where essentially they say you cut out all dairy, you cut out everything except meat, salt, and water, essentially. And the only reason I'm considering that is because there are a few items that I leave in right now, such as ghee and butter. Um, I do have eggs. Occasionally, I'll have a different type of meat. Like one thing that I never thought I would eat was sardines until I actually tried them, because there's certain fatty acids and stuff in fish that you can just easily manipulate and get those fatty acids in your system. So I found out I enjoyed those, but um, the only reason I'm considering cutting some of this stuff out is just to truly get down to the nitty gritty of, is it the dairy causing the continued elevated, or is it like just still my body's way of responding to the whole healing process, and maybe it's still a little bit overwhelmed. So with having the normal thyroid levels, though, I'm assuming that it's an immune attack still, because the antibodies are an immune response. And so they're just specifically attacking my thyroid area. And so although it's not necessarily, related to T3 or T4 or TSH, it's still affecting my thyroid in a manner. So I'm trying to figure out, should I just go meat, salt, water, or like I said, there are still things I leave in. One thing I probably should cut out is I still like to have coffee occasionally in the mornings. So, and I went without it for months, and I reintroduced it and didn't have any problems. So, gastrointestinal wise though, which was the main concern for myself because I dealt with ulcerative colitis for so long, I just wanted to be able to have a normal life again, not
Right.
feeling like I had to go to the bathroom all the time. So I was ecstatic to get that back. And the coffee wasn't playing any part in that. Like I still felt really good. But when I got those levels back, I was like, well, I guess it could be one thing I could cut out. But I also had cut it out for so long prior to getting my labs back that I was like, I'm not really sure if it's the coffee. So that's one thing I'm kind of working through right now. I'm not really sure, what it is just yet, but it may end up getting to the point where I just go straight, lion diet, and we'll see how that goes. But
Have you tried iodine?
I supplement with iodine, magnesium, and there's a couple things I've been reading on because I assume, this is just my own thought process, that it is a immune response. And so I was doing some research on desiccated thymus, like beef or bovine desiccated thymus, similar to some of the desiccated organs that you see, that like liver and heart, that they sell in the little capsules. And
Hmm.
they say that thymus is supposed to really help with that immune response and kind of help regulate it. And I've read a lot of results that people who have thyroid issues are getting their numbers back in the normal ranges. So people who have high TPO or the antibodies like I do are using this beef thymus, whereas people who have dysfunctional thyroids, whether that be low T3, T4, TSH, they're using the desiccated beef thyroid, like they have desiccated thyroid organ, and those people are having good success with it too. So it's one of those things that I'm like, maybe I'll introduce this. Like I know it might not be necessary, but it might help kickstart stuff to kind of get it rolling in the right direction.
Right.
So, but yeah, I
Yeah.
do supplement with, I think the iodine, I do like 3 to 4 drops. So it's probably around 12 micrograms.
Right. I do a lot. I do about 30 milligrams of iodine. I put it in a capsule, the liquid blue gulls, 2% iodine. Um, and then I started doing that with my son as well. And I've got everyone else in the house taking it too. They're a little slower with this whole thing. Sometimes they're just like, will you just be quiet? you know. Um, but my roommate, she was saying that the iodine, it's like a really good antidepressant, is almost, since she's been taking it, she's like, it's almost like I'm on a really good antidepressant,
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah. I've seen, and someone I was talking to, I believe Serena was the one that brought this up to me, in regards to the iodine, that I was taking. I think I was, or no, it was Mary Beauchamp when I was interviewing with her recently. She had recommended bumping up my iodine dosage because I think I was taking around 5. I don't remember the units, if it was micrograms or milligrams, but
Mhm.
um, anyway, I was around 5, and she had recommended, at least 12. So I went ahead and upped the dosage to 3 to 4 drops, and then I remember watching a video of Dr. Barry, who had said that like a lot of the Asian populations, their diet is super high in iodine, and they're up to 50 a day, and they don't have any adverse health effects from it. And so I'm like, well, maybe with a thyroid condition, if I do go higher on the end of dosage wise, like it's not going to probably affect me negatively, but at least it'll give that extra iodine in the blood to not only support other organs, but specifically the thyroid. So,
Right.
but
Yeah, I'm amazed with this 100% carnivore. I thought the transition from 80% to 100%, I was like, I can't do this, months ago. I thought it was going to be a lot harder than it was, but my health, my Graves' disease, my, all that, I'm like, I don't, the doctor, the thyroid doctor suggested, this medication, radioactive iodine treatment, or removal of the thyroid. Those were his 3 options.
yeah,
Didn't say, and I found this on my own, didn't say anything like caffeine is a no-no for Graves' disease. It really is not good, caffeine. Like, why didn't he tell me that? Just jump to, pharmaceuticals and removal. I'm just like, that's not happening. I'm not taking that medication. And I know it doesn't mean anything, but the first 4 letters in this really long medication name is meth. No, I'm not big on pharmaceuticals. I'm finally off Zoloft. I haven't taken pharmaceuticals since the car accident, so it's huge for me.
Right.
Grew up seeing my mom on pharmaceuticals, myself, since 17, antidepressants. It's always something, I was sick all the time, at least once or twice a year, I'd be down and out, and on some antibiotic or, something. So
Yeah,
it's
and
really,
I know you had talked about too, like just bringing back up the caffeine thing. I know you said that you used to love Starbucks and coffee and all those different things, and so since
or
cutting it out,
avocado shots, you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. So
Yeah.
since cutting it out, and like I said, for myself, I didn't notice any adverse effects physically. Like I guess I couldn't say that, I felt better or felt worse with or without coffee. But did you notice anything like with the transition off of coffee to no coffee, or just caffeine in general, I guess?
Well, I guess caffeine, because before, if I would get a caffeine headache, I would need caffeine, otherwise I would get a headache. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I didn't have coffee yet. I need, I need my coffee. I need my frappe or my frappuccino or whatever with 4 ad shots. Um, and then what I did to get off of caffeine, because I saw that caffeine was a no-no for Graves' disease, was I would do, I would half it. I would do part caffeine, part decaf. And then until I got down to just a quarter caffeine and the rest decaf, and then eventually I cut it out. Now, if I happen to have coffee and it they lie and it's not decaf and they give me a caffeinated one, I will know within 5 minutes my head will be pounding. It now gives me a headache.
Really?
So yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I I had a cup earlier today. Usually, I guess the reason I like it in the morning is just it's obviously routine, but
Yeah.
I went so long without that routine that I'm not stricken to that routine, if that makes sense. Like I could change it if I need to, but it's something I like to drink before I go to the gym. I typically train, without eating, so it's kind of like my coffee before I go, and
Now, do
then
you drink it black?
right now I'm doing it with like two small, just two. It's black, and then 2 tablespoons of heavy cream, and then a little like 2 tablespoons of butter. So basically a bulletproof or bullet coffee.
Yeah.
So that's how I've been drinking it, and I've been, like I said, obviously I enjoy it, but as far as adverse effects, I can't. It's hard to pinpoint right now if that's contributing to the thyroid stuff or not. I don't feel like maybe it is because I went probably 6 months or more with none, and like no caffeine whatsoever, no pre-workouts, no coffee, no caffeine pills,
Oh, I
nothing.
did notice something when I did stop the caffeine. Is my thyroid on the right side was goiterish, huge.
Hmm.
When I cut out the caffeine, this started getting smaller. It is a little bit bigger on this side versus this side, but it's not bad.
Right.
I had a goiter. Okay.
Okay.
Um, and so cutting out caffeine, that's what I noticed was the goiter.
It's interesting though, because the only symptom I can say that I've ever felt with my Hashimoto stuff is that it's almost like having a constant sore throat right here. And
Oh,
it's not necessarily an internal feeling. It feels almost like a muscle soreness, like just a kind of an achy throat all the time. And
right.
and I don't know what necessarily causes that. I assume it's just because of the elevated inflammation in that spot specific area. But um, I have noticed it just sitting there. You just feel like a constant, it's almost like you got something in your throat.
Hmm. Yeah.
But
Well, I had a trach because we were in a coma.
mhm,
They had to put a trach in. And my son's trach scar is quite a bit further. And I know it's, man versus woman, it could be different. But I also think that because my scar is really close to my thyroid,
mhm.
really close. And I'm like, well, maybe they put it too close to my thyroid. Maybe that's why it went from extremely low to extremely high. I'm just trying to figure out, why such a switch before the car accident to after.
No,
I mean, I know it does something to you because I didn't have a period for a year after the car accident. So I know it does something, the trauma, or I don't know if it, losing my spleen, I'm not really sure. The brain bleed, I really don't know. I'm just, speculating on, at this point, but
sure. Yeah, no, I think with that many different injuries to your body at one time, and then coupled with having a trach, it's an open wound essentially right below your thyroid, which I'm sure draws a lot of
when I
stress.
swallow, you can hear it. My roommate actually, she'll say ribbit because it sounds like a frog.
Yeah.
If it's real quiet in the room, people can hear me swallow.
Yeah. I think now would be actually we've mentioned the car accident a couple times. Why don't you just kind of let everybody know just an overview of what was involved with that, just so they can kind of understand the severity of it.
Okay, well, on October 16th, 2019, I was taking my son's friend home down a road I had never been before. I had always wondered, because I grew up in this area, I always wondered, what's down that way? But never took the time to go look. So when we get to the stop sign and he's all, you go that way. And I'm like, oh, I've always wondered what was down here. Interesting, drop him off and heading back. It's raining, it's dark. There's a tree branch sticking out in front of the stop sign. And like I said, I'd never been down that way. Coming the other way, there's rumble strips right before the stop sign. But coming back the other way, there's no rumble strips. So I just didn't see it and got T-boned, rolled 6 times to the left. And, it was a 92 Toyota. So it had seat belts that would plug up into the door, but you also had to put a lap belt on. And we never wore that lap belt, ever. I think had we had the lap belts on, because the way the passenger side was crushed, I think my son would have lost his legs. So, who knows though. But, it was a couple blocks down the road was a fire station. So they were able to get on the scene fairly quickly. They had to cut the roof off to get us out. It was up on the passenger side. And I was on top of Noah. And they had no idea who the driver was because my son was in such good shape. He was very healthy. He was starting to jump on board with the carnivore stuff. He's asking lots of questions before the car accident. He's like, this is really interesting, Mom, and he would work out every morning and every night. He wanted to be healthy. So that was on his side, but the EMTs couldn't tell because he looked to be about 20, 25 was their guesstimate in the medical files. That's what it said. 19 to 25 years of age, male. And the only reason why they knew I was driving is because I was knocked out of my flip-flops. They were still in place at the pedals. But they took him and his girlfriend at the time to one hospital. They took me to the other one, different town. And they did what they could for my son at that hospital, and they had to airlift him because they didn't have the capabilities because he needed a cranioplasty because it was just swelling. So they airlifted him to Reading, and that's where they did the cranioplasty to relieve pressure. And they sent me to the one in Wairika, and they had to cut me open to see why I was bleeding internally, and found my spleen was ruptured, my liver was lacerated. They had to, stitch up the lacerations, remove my spleen, and stitch me back up, and then they airlifted me to the same hospital in Reading. And we were there for, I think because it was October 16th, Halloween was when I was transferred to the rehabilitation hospital. Wasn't treated well there at all. It was kind of a joke, actually. My son was 150 pounds when the car accident happened. By the time my daughter put up a stink, like, I need my brother transferred to a better hospital. I want him in Oakland. now. Like, he was 90 pounds,
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
malnourished. He had bed sores, my daughter said. I didn't see him in that state, thank God, because I was in my own healing thing too. But so they finally got them to transfer him to Oakland Children's Hospital, and they had him back up to 130 in a matter of 2 months. So but they were malnourishing my baby.
Yeah, I was gonna say that should have been. I mean, that's just plain as day malpractice, really, because even
Yeah.
for somebody who's in a sedative state, their body still has a baseline metabolic need for organ function, and
Right.
just to lose 60 pounds like that is,
Yeah. Yeah, he was just skin and bones. I mean, the fact that he was in such good shape was on his side, I think, honestly. But they even suggested to his father and my daughter to pull the plug, that he's going to be in this form forever, and James was like, absolutely not. And James is his father. And that's when they started putting in the motion to move him to another one, but they think they wanted his organs.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the motivation, was to get his organs.
And so once he was transferred to the other hospital and started to kind of make a turn for the better in regards to weight and stuff, did he eventually, were the doctors the one that pulled him out of the coma, or did he come out of it naturally, or?
I'm not 100% on that. I know I was in a medically induced coma because every time I would come to, I was combative. I was pulling out tubes, and
Right.
they keep me sedated so that I wouldn't interfere with my healing.
Right.
And I know Noah was put in a coma. My daughter said it had to be really quiet in the room. There couldn't be any noise. They can go in and see him, but the machines would start, beeping and stuff if it got too loud, and they would have to leave. It was a very sensitive, atmosphere.
Right.
But I wasn't there. I was, so I just know what I've been told as far as that goes.
Well, once he got out of the hospital and stuff and you were able to get him home, I know it was kind of like hitting the reset button in regards to habits and just daily function in general. So when you got home, what did that kind of look like for you guys?
Well, he was in a wheelchair. He had a feeding tube. He couldn't talk. He could walk. We would put a belt around him. We would have to hold on to it to help him walk, and there'd have to be people on each side of him and one behind him. But that didn't take long. And and in the hospital they were giving him that it's like formula, feeding tube.
Right.
And there's high fructose corn syrup in that too.
Was it like an Ensure?
Kind of, but it was more vegetable based.
Okay.
Carbs too, of course. But I mean, it got him back up to weight. So I'm thankful for that. But and we weren't on 100% carnivore this whole time. But Noah kind of always has been, in a sense. I mean, because he's well, he's 18, but he's not. So he pretty much, will eat what I give him. You know what I mean? So that's beneficial. And he doesn't eat past full. If he happens to take a bite and he has food in his mouth, he'll just spit it out. He does not eat past full. Another interesting thing, I mean, he's yawned once, but he doesn't yawn anymore either. And I don't know, I'm sure obviously that's a brain thing. So the part of his brain that was injured affected his ability to yawn. He yawned once about a month ago for the first time since before the accident. So that was a milestone. It's like, oh, he yawned. You know what I mean? Just these little things that we take for granted.
Yeah, I'm sitting here, just thinking that he got home just under or just over 2 years ago now, was in a
Uh,
wheelchair, a feeding
yeah.
tube, uh, couldn't really talk, like had to go through the speech therapy and occupational therapy. And now I sit here, watch him walk around, and we talked earlier before we got started recording. And
Uh-huh.
um, I think it's a blessing he's here, because it started early for him. It was even in your pregnancy and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think it's a,
Womb. He's been a
yeah,
fighter
it's a
since
great
the womb. Yeah.
it's a great story, and just to see him here is so cool. So and you think the
Well, and since it's
carnivore,
part of the iodine and the 100% carnivore too, he, because we're having to re-potty train. We're having to do
Mhm,
that over.
right?
Um, and we were having a really hard time because he has to have a lot of prompting. Why don't
Mhm,
you go brush your teeth, Noah? Why don't you try to go to the bathroom? Why don't you sit down and eat? I mean, you have to tell him step by step everything.
right.
Uh, And that, we would tell him to go to the bathroom and he would just sit there and he wouldn't go, ever. It just never would happen. Well, since the iodine and 100% carnivore, every day, at least twice a day, we get him to pee in that toilet. And the underpants are dry all day,
No, yeah,
which is
that's
huge,
fantastic. Yeah.
huge. Um, he's chiming in on conversations, like me and someone will be talking and he'll walk in the room and he'll chime in something, and if that makes sense, that's appropriate to the topic. And it's like, oh, yes, just these little things that, like I said, everyone takes for granted.
Yeah.
Um, so that's cool.
No,
Yeah.
that's really cool, considering where, like I said, it was just over 2 years ago, and for such a to have part of your skull removed from brain swelling,
Yeah.
to be where he's at now is such an improvement. And this is
Yes.
just from an outsider looking in. Like, I can only imagine what it's like, but
Well, in Reading, they had his cranium piece and they had mailed it or airlifted it to Oakland so they can try to put it back in, because there was like, it's time we could put it back in. Well, for whatever reason, I don't know, they didn't test it for contaminants before they put it back in his head, and it was contaminated, and he got staph infection in the brain, and they had to remove it and throw it away. Then they had to wait a certain amount of time for him to come in and have a CT scan to build a prosthetic one. And so we did that, and this is Oakland. That's like 5 hours away, for us. It's not, just driving down to the hospital.
yeah.
It's, and it's a lot with a brain injury, you know what I mean? To be in the car. Um, and then he had that one for, I think, 4 months. And one morning got him up and there was a huge puddle of pus on his pillow. And somehow he got an infection under that plate. And it took 4 months for it to do anything and come out. Took him to the hospital. They airlifted him back to Oakland. They had to remove that one as well. And they had to wait 6 months before they could build another one. And they would have to build a different one. They have to do a CT scan again because he's, of his age and growing. And now he's had this one for a little over a year now. So far, so good. So I'm hoping we're good with the brain surgeries, because he's had 5.
Yeah. No, it's unreal. I think it's so encouraging to see him just walking and talking like we did earlier today. So um, I think it really is a testament to diet. It's certainly not the only thing that's contributing to his healing. Obviously having people like you to help him and take care of him, and
Right.
guide him through the process is vital too. But I think just being on a high fat diet like that gives the
Mhm.
brain the nutrients it needs to help rebuild the proteins, and they're just rebuilding the whole process is so important, as opposed to a diet mixed with other stuff that's competing with nutrients. And it
Right.
seems like this really kind of helps streamline the process.
Well, and a few weeks ago, it was my youngest's birthday and we had ice cream and cake, there. And So, okay, I'll have a little bite of ice cream and a little piece of cake, we're human, you know.
Yeah.
And so I gave Noah a bite of each as well. Well, the next day he had a seizure, and of course, mom beating myself up. You gave your son a seizure. You knew better. You know what I mean? Because carbs do contribute to seizures. So does heat. Like we went to the lake yesterday, and I guess he got a little overheated at 4 a.m. this morning. He had a seizure. He has a little bit of a sunburn on his back. So, again, mom, more shame. You know what I mean? But it's a learning curve. I'm still learning. This is all new to me. But I do the best I can, and I'm proud of him. He's honestly my hero.
Yeah, it's
Noah is my hero.
yeah, it's like you said, where at the end of the day, at a social event like that, you still want him to feel like a normal person, that gets to have a small piece of cake or gets to try
Right.
this, that doesn't have to live a life totally restricted. So I totally understand that. But it's like you said, you do see, and I know Dr. Chafee's talked about this too with like epilepsy patients and stuff, that putting them on a super high fat, no carb diet helps with their seizures. And I
Mm,
want to say that they've even discussed certain things like autism and stuff on there. And it's just so wild to me, all of the different brain, you know, traumas and ailments that people experience, how much improvement they have on a diet that's similar to this.
right.
So, well, is there anything else that you wanted to kind of touch on today? I know we've kind of covered a lot in regards to you and Noah, and I think you've both had significant healing so far. Is there anything you feel like that we maybe missed or glossed over?
Um, well, I haven't seen anything, but has Chafee done anything on seizures or brain injuries
I
with
haven't seen
Carnivore?
him. I haven't seen him do any direct videos, but I have heard him talk throughout a few different things, just in regards to uh, because he is a brain surgeon as a career, so he has mentioned it periodically, and I that might be something that we should mention in the group. It'd be a great topic to discuss because I know there's a lot of people out there that have had brain traumas, either from motor vehicle crashes like you had, or off-road vehicle crashes, or sports, or all these different things. And then there's also people that have autistic children, epileptic children. I know personally we've got some friends of ours that have a boy who struggles with epilepsy. He'll just, be at work and drop into a seizure for no reason. And
Mhm.
so I would love to see an episode like that pop up.
Right. Well, and Noah had skipped grades, like I said, taught himself how to play the guitar, the piano. He was working on the drums. um, amazing.
Mhm.
Just absolutely amazing. So now what I'm doing, I mean, we still have his guitar around. He'll pick it up and strum on it, but he just goes through the scales at this point. I really believe that he will be able to play close to what he did before. His therapists think 95% at about the 10-year mark is probably what he'll get back to. 95%, that's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
So
I'm
he
certainly.
also wanted to be a brain surgeon.
Oh wow.
That's what Noah wanted to be. Thing he talked about a lot was finding a cure for Alzheimer's. He said that was, his big thing. So,
That's
I
another thing I've heard him talk about. I want to say it was his dad that struggled with, I can't remember if he termed it Alzheimer's or if his dad just really had a problem with memory or what it was, but he had said that once he eliminated all of the grains and carbs and stuff, that his dad was back to his normal self again.
right. Yeah. So, it's ironic to me that, it was his brain of all things that had to be injured. Like, why Noah's brain, man? No, geez.
Yeah.
Because he just had all these goals. And I would always say it's not Jack of all trades, it's Noah of all trades. It's like they need to change that name to Noah, not Jack.
Yeah. Well, like you said, 95% from what you guys have been through is phenomenal. And I'm super optimistic about it, just giving the leaps and bounds in 2 years that you guys have seen.
Right.
So I think it's fantastic how far he's come so far.
Oh, me too. And it scares a lot of people, like his friends, because people really haven't seen him much, and when they do decide to come around, it is a shock. They leave in tears, because he is not the same.
Yeah.
I've had to mourn that Noah.
Right.
It's been a journey.
Yeah, like I said, I can only imagine I can't imagine the process behind it all. So, yeah, it's like I said, it's just really encouraging to see how dark a space this all came from to where it's going now is really encouraging.
Yes.
So, well,
He loves his meat. He loves his meat. I'll cut up, I have to cut it up for him. Otherwise he'll try to put the whole steak in his mouth. But he will drink the blood juice off the plate and lick the plate, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, that's normal because I tend to catch myself shoving a whole steak in my mouth too. So, but one question I like to kind of end all the conversations with, and we'll get Noah involved in on this too. What would you say is your favorite carnivore meal? I know ribeye is kind of the king or the most talked about in this space, and certainly one of my favorites. But what would you say that your two favorites are for?
Okay, well, ribeye. I love ribeye fat. It is so creamy. It is so good. Ribeye fat is awesome. But right now, I'm really digging top sirloin. I just, I go to the local store here, and it's grass-fed Prather. It's good meat. And I just get these. I'm like, I need all three of those, and they're just these huge slabs of steak. But ribeyes and top sirloin, I think right now and chuck steak.
That's a good choice.
In
Yeah.
the Dutch oven with butter and a little bit of water and some salt, and let it slow cook at 250 all day. That is so scrumptious. I love it.
Yeah, I interchange the chuck eye or the chuck steaks and the ribeyes just because I do like a fattier cut of steak. And the chuck steaks, for those of you who are interested, are actually a lot cheaper than the ribeyes too. So if you're ever on a budget, chuck steak is a great. You can get a chuck roast or a chuck steak. They're usually significantly cheaper per pound. So,
and I'm loving seafood too. I go back and forth from shrimp to scallops. So yum.
And are you guys able to get fresh seafood right there in California?
No, it's not where we are. We're nowhere near the coast.
Okay.
We try to do wild caught, even though it comes frozen. We try to stick with wild caught versus farmed.
Yeah.
And
how about for Noah? What would his favorite recipe be?
I would say tri-tip.
Oh wow, okay. I don't even think I've ever had tri-tip before.
It's big over here.
Is it? So what is what explain that cut? What is that? I mean I've probably seen it in stores before, but like I said, I'm a creature of habit, so I stick to my ground beef and ribeye and.
Well, it's pretty big. They're pretty big and thick. It almost kind of looks like the size of a roast, I guess you'd say.
Okay.
They're really good, to cook on the grill. You slow cook in a Dutch oven, that's good too. Yeah, barbecue. That's right.
Yeah, the man knows what he likes.
Yeah.
All right, and one last question for you. If you knew anybody that was, say, on the fence about carnivore, what would you kind of tell them if they were struggling with something like you or I have struggled with, and they came to you and they were kind of like, hey, this way just kind of seems kind of crazy? What would you say?
I would say well, don't knock it till you try it, but it has changed my life for the better. There's nothing negative I could say about it at all. It's all positive. My skin, my hair, my nails, my mind, my size, and I wasn't, yes, I always wanted to be this size, but it's not like that was my main focus for doing it. My main focus was my mind,
Right.
and it just, once you do that, everything falls into place. Everything becomes easier, and why wouldn't you want that for yourself,
Yeah, that's what I tell people too, is for myself, I'm a personal trainer and help people with diet stuff. And people come to me all the time and don't have other aspects of their health in order, but then they want to change their body physically. And so that's typically the first part that I try to address, is say, hey, let's tackle these parts of your life first. And the other
And
stuff will be
it will fall into place. It will, like
exactly.
dominoes, it'll just boop.
Yeah, it's a secondary result of getting the other
Oh,
things
I
in line.
tan so well now. I was, at the lake, I am just like, wow.
Yeah. That's one thing I've noticed too, is whenever I used to burn so bad when I would go outside, and even at the beach. And the other day I was outside doing yard work and I still got red, but then the next day it wasn't sunburned. It's
Right.
like it just went away. So it's crazy. I totally agree with you. If anybody's out there, that's having some type of ailment, whether it's mental or gastro or joint related, whatever it might be, just try it for 60 days. And if you don't see significant improvement, go back to the way you're eating. It's 60 days. Like
60 days is too hard for you mentally. Do 30, because that's what I had to tell myself when I first went on to 100% carnivore. I'm like, okay, 30, I'll make it 30 days, and then I'm gonna have a ham and cheese croissant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Killing myself in the beginning, and then by the time that I like past 30 days, and I'm like, screw the ham and cheese croissant, I don't want that shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just like, I am good.
No, that's a great point, because if somebody needs to start small, like you said, I saw results personally in less than 10 days. So it was like, then it was like,
Yeah.
okay, well, what can I get next? And what can I get next? And then you have this compounding factor that's easier to build on. So I think that's a great point.
Yes.
So, well, I really appreciate you hopping out with me here tonight and sharing you and Noah's story. It's like I said, it's such an encouraging story, and I think it's gonna help some people out there. So, I just want to
Thank
thank.
you for giving us the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So thank you, Elena, and thank you, Noah, for joining us. And
Of course.
if anybody would like to reach out to you, do you have a social media platform or maybe an email, or are you open to that? It's totally up to you.
Yeah, Elena at enjoyweed.com.
Okay, awesome. I'll make sure in the show notes that I put that in there. And
I like to, it isn't really a name I've created for myself. Like, it's not on any platform really. But I like to call myself the purple carnivore because my hair is purple. You know what I mean?
no, I love that.
Yeah. So
All right, well, if anybody wants to say hello to the purple carnivore or reach out to her with any questions, I'll make sure I tag her email down below this. But we appreciate you guys watching and listening to our stories, and we encourage you guys to do your own research on the carnivore diet, because we know how much of an impact it's had on our own lives. So with that being said, I really appreciate you jumping on here, and I'm sure I'll talk to you soon in the group.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Have a good day.
You as well.
Bye-bye.